Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. So Mark has type 1 diabetes. He's got a couple little kids, and he's an educator. My note here says that at some point, Mark just went off about the education system, and I went with him. So apparently that's about to happen. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Hey, listen, if you have type 1 diabetes or are the caregiver of someone with type 1 and you're a U.S. resident, I would appreciate it if you went to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and completed the survey. That's it. You're going to help. It's going to be easy. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You can help type 1 diabetes research to move forward right from your house. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. drinkag1.com/juicebox. The episode you're listening to is sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. You can get your diabetes testing supplies the same way we do from US Med. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Eversense CGM. An implantable 6-month sensor is what you get with Eversense, but you get so much more. Exceptional and consistent accuracy over 6 months, and distinct on-body vibe alerts when you're high or low. On-body vibe alerts? You don't even know what that means, do you? EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. Go find out. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox.
My name is Mark Picardo. I have been a type 1 diabetic since October 30th, 2003. So that is over 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, I am 33 years old. I have a small family, my wife and my 2 children. I am an educator. I'm really excited to be here. And something I'm passionate about is just bringing my experience and awareness with type 1 diabetes and being able to share that with the community around me and be able to help, especially kids in my schools who are diabetic, looking for somebody who could be a mentor and just a shoulder to lean on.
I'm going to pick through all this with you. Tell me how old your kids are.
My son, Angelo, and I don't mind sharing their names. He is 4. He'll be 5 in June.
Nice.
And then my daughter, Alessia, just turned 2 in February.
Wow. Oh, good for you. Congratulations. Have you not been married long, or did you just get started with the kids?
We got married in 2016. So, my wife and I have been together for...
It just doesn't. 12, it's not a good look, Mark. If you can't come up with it quickly.
14 years.
Very nice. 14 years. Been married about 8. You got 2 nice little kids. Okay. Any other autoimmune in your family or with you?
There is no history of diabetes in my family. There's no history of autoimmune disorders in my family. It is just me. I am the special one.
And just type 1 for you.
Just type 1.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming on and spending the time with me very much. I feel like when I saw you for a little bit this morning, it looks like you're actually out of school right now. So I am in a classroom. With my door shut and locked and a sign on the door that says Zoom meeting. But yes, I am out of school. One of the good things about my position is having some of that flexibility to be doing some other things. That's very nice.
Along with yeah,
excellent. Okay, so let's see. How did you find me? I'm going to start there today.
So I guess that would be a good opportunity for me to just talk a little bit. So during COVID, I don't know, what year is that, 2020?
Feels like it was, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it was forever ago. I wanted to start an Instagram account for myself that just focused on diabetes. I ended up creating a brand called Type 1 Wellness. Mm-hmm. And through my Instagram and through the social media, I was able to just honestly stumble upon a community that was much larger and much bigger than anything that I had imagined. And a lot of the people that I had been speaking to and networking with and learning from, so many people reference the Juicebox podcast as a place where they learn quite a bit from and really appreciate the awareness that you're bringing. And in addition to that, it's obviously it's good entertainment as well, because it's something that you can relate with.
I appreciate that.
And then last year at my old school up in New York, I had a teacher who has a son with type 1, and she was on your show. I want to say at least once, maybe a couple times, and she had mentioned to me, "Hey, you should just reach out," because one thing she brought up was that there's not very many men who talk about what it's like to be a father, to be a male, to be a man with diabetes, and what that's like. And she thought there would be some value.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Tell her thank you. And she's not wrong. It's a little more difficult to get men. And even then, when you get them, it's sometimes difficult for them to emote and like really connect while they're talking. So sometimes they feel a little stiffer while they're sharing.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something I want to do more of. So would you say that you went to Instagram to learn something for yourself, or did you feel like you had something to share?
I think a little bit of both. I would say my initial purpose was, hey, this is what I do. This is my management. Maybe I can share. And I think a little bit selfishly too, I said, hey, maybe I could turn this into something that might be another career path. What I didn't realize was that within even just a couple of months of creating my account and then just following, a lot of people within the community, how much I would learn and how much it would impact my personal management and the way that I approach diabetes. And since then, I've pivoted, and I use it purely just for awareness and to share my story, and really, honestly, again, selfishly, to learn from others.
Yeah,
I come from a really supportive family, and so being diagnosed at 13 years old, it was necessary to have parents that were supportive. And my management has always been, fairly okay, fairly good. I would say within the last 2-3 years, it has gotten to another level, something that I'm really proud of. My family and I, we moved from New York to North Carolina last July. And so I went in and saw the endo for the first time in February. And my first A1C since the move was 5.7.
Oh, good for you.
And I'm like, wow, with the amount of stress and the amount of anxiety and this and that with the move, and just to be able to still keep that management. And that's not me tooting my own horn. That's just, it's something that I'm proud of.
Is it fair to say that you think that in the past, in that scenario, you would have seen a rise in your A1C? If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information.
I 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just everything that, so the lift, I don't know if you've ever, Scott, moved across states or this, but finding a house, finding a job, finding an area that you want to be happy in, moving your family, driving cross country with 2 little kids. Mm-hmm. It's beyond anything that I would ever imagine. And it's something I never want to do again. When you add in the complications of diabetes, yeah, I would never have predicted that I would have been able to keep my management as strong as it has been.
So what would you say hearing from, you're not hearing from them, right? They have Instagram accounts, you have Instagram accounts. So you're seeing their life what they're sharing of it, reflect it back in front of you. Maybe you read a little blurb or something that they've written. And are you actually interacting? Are you commenting on people's things? Are you having personal relationships, or is it just the act of receiving what they're putting out?
I have established some really great relationships with people that I've never met in person, strictly through the diabetes community. I have relationships with someone in Australia. I have a relationship with somebody in Dubai, people that I would consider pretty close friends, that, we talk on a consistent basis, and not just about diabetes, just, about our lives. And I think that's something that's a really great part of the community, and in a sense, social media. All the negativity that comes with social media, it can be hard, but I think there if you approach it the right way, there are some positives. And for me and some of these people, it's okay. You have a common ground. You have something that you can share. You can be vulnerable with each other, and it's much easier to break down those barriers and create relationships based on something that is meaningful. And there's always going to be some people that you're following and talking to that it's just you're commenting or watching or this or that. But
But where does the value come from that actually impacts your A1C?
So for me, and this is not in any way, shape, or form trying to downplay the significance and role of what my doctors have provided me and what doctors continue to provide with other people with this condition. But I have learned that it's those little intricate things that people share just from their experience that I was never told in a doctor's office. Something as simple as a pre-bolus. And that might sound crazy to you because I know you talk about it quite often. Up until I started nobody ever told me, hey, you should pre-bolus for meals.
Mark,
and I said,
have you ever heard Erica on the podcast? Like in some of the more like mental health stuff, she's a therapist that comes on.
I believe I have. I've listened to quite, so it's hard to keep them.
No, I know. Listen, that's my fault. I make a lot of stuff. But Erica's had type 1 diabetes for I think like 35 years. She's on a recent episode where she said, I think I heard about pre-bolusing from you, Scott. And she grew up for 3 decades and had a brother with type 1 on top of that, has a brother with type 1. And she's still like saying like, oh no, I think I heard about it on the podcast. I mean, it's hard to call even pre-bolusing a building block of managing yourself. It's a fundamental. It's like putting gas in your car. Like we don't think about that as being part of the process to drive. You have to do that part. And it's fascinating that the timing of the insulin is not spoken about between doctors and patients very frequently.
It floors me thinking about some of the times of the way that I personally manage. And then, to be completely honest, like sometimes, you go into the endocrinologist's office and you have to tell them what they want to hear. And then you're going to walk away. Whatever it is that you talked about is not even what you're doing because, for me, for example, I was on a pump within 6 months of being diagnosed. And I was on an insulin pump from 2003 until 2017, I would say. I had an incident in December of 2017 where I was unresponsive in the morning. My wife woke up and was not able to wake me up. I think my blood sugar was like a 13. I finally came to. I had 5 gigantic firemen in my bed, and I was fighting the shit out of them. And that was the one and only time I've ever had a complication that severe. But I ended up switching to MDI shortly after that, and then I also switched over to the Dexcom shortly after that. And I'll tell you what, I will never go back on a pump. And maybe that's too concrete of a statement to make, but for me, this is just what works. And I think I talked about the finite details that I've learned through social media and the community, but I think the biggest message that I've taken away, and this is something too that I try to share as well, is that everybody has to figure out what works for them. And I wish there was a little bit more of that mindset at a doctor's office and with the endocrinologists. And I'm actually really, really lucky because I do feel as though my current one down here in North Carolina does support that idea of, hey, if this is working, don't break it or don't fix it.
Yeah.
But I would go to my old endo and I was on MDI and my A1C was maybe low 6, and every time I go, it's, hey, I really think you should try this pump. Hey, I really think you should try this pump. actually probably a year and a half ago, I tried an Omnipod and I tried the T-Slim. And for some people, I'm sure they're absolutely phenomenal. And I think, in theory, in a perfect vacuum, the idea of the closed system and the closed is wonderful. But for me, it didn't work. And my management was worse again. And I ended up, after about 6 months, going back to shots. And,
okay,
not everybody.
Your MDI right now with a CGM?
I used the Dexcom G7, and then I used Fiasp for my short acting. I used Traceba for my long acting.
Nice. Well, that's great. Mark, I'm going to need you to say something very, very interesting in the next 45 minutes. It stops me from calling your podcast episode 5 Giant Firemen. So,
and that's absolutely fine.
Because right now, that's far and away my winner. It's the way you said it. Like, I woke up with 5 giant firemen in my bed, and I was like, "This is hilarious."
Absolutely terrified. And I mean, and I'm not a really big guy, but I had at least 3 or 4 of them had to keep me down because I was fighting like no other.
Did you flip out because you opened your eyes to 5 people, or because your blood sugar was still where it was?
So my blood sugar was whatever 13. I thought I was sleeping, or I thought I was dreaming. Oh. And like I recall in that moment trying, like I wanted to wake up. So they were trying to get the IV in me to administer some sort of glucose. And I was fighting with that. And I mean, I think it might have been just part of that reaction. That fear and a lot of
it's weird when your blood sugar's low and a dream state. And listen, I fell asleep with my headphones in last night, and for 2 hours I thought I was Billy Joel. I had a Billy Joel playlist on. Yeah, it was like in my dream I was just singing Billy Joel songs, and when I woke up I thought, I wonder if I was singing in my sleep, but Kelly was asleep, so I couldn't ask her.
That's hilarious.
How long did you try pumping for, and how long have you been off it?
So my first experience with pumping was with various Medtronic systems, and that was for almost 15 years. And in a lot of ways, it was good. But my biggest problem was, in my opinion, even though I've been told I'm wrong, was scar tissue in sites. I had towards the end of my use of Medtronic, there was days where I was using 6, 7, 8 different site changes because I'd insert a site and my number would be, I don't know, say 100, and 2 hours later I'm at 350, and I'm bolusing and I'm stacking and I'm bolusing and I'm rage bolusing, and it's just not coming down. And
do you think absorption was your issue?
Absorption was 100% my issue, and I would go to the doctor and I'd beg, I'd say, what, like, something is wrong. What do I need? So we tried different types of silhouettes. We tried, and I was always fairly good about rotating my sites. Again, I'm not a big guy. I work out. I'm athletic, so it's not exactly like I have an endless amount of areas to try. But I did the best I could. I tried as hard as I could, and it just it was so unsuccessful and so frustrating. And I would literally drive around with my car, and I would have multiple boxes, not just like individual sites, boxes of sites, because at any point I knew that there could be a failure. Thinking about like packing to go on vacation, I would probably pack like a 6-month supply because of sometimes how often I would have to change and how frustrated it was.
Oh my God. And you did fight through that for a decade and a half? You tried it?
So, I mean, for the first decade, it was probably, great, being brand new. But then I would say the last 4 or 5 years on it, it was tough. And then it was progressively worse towards the end.
Okay.
By the end, it was like, this is not even, this isn't functional. And I mean, ever since switching to shots, it's just been, it's like a breath of fresh air.
That's great. I'm glad you found what works.
Yeah. And I tried, because I've always been open-minded, and I did try the Omnipod and the T-Slim, and it was the same thing. It was the absorption. Again, it just didn't work for me.
Have you considered getting an in-pen so you can get a little bit of the functionality and the math behind pumping?
So that's the one that communicates, right, with your...
Yeah, with an app, and it sort of like it helps you with,
That's a great That's a great thought. I haven't really thought about that. I was presented with at first I was using the Geo with the refillable cartridges.
Mm-hmm.
And then since I've just been getting the Fiasp pens as they are.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also don't know if InPen and Fiasp go together or not. But anyway, I mean, it's neither here nor there.
That's something for me to definitely note, though.
Yeah, you can look into it if you like. Just to go back so that people can hear it clearly. When you were on a pump and it wasn't working for you in the end, this wasn't you ignoring your settings. It wasn't you not bolusing. Like, you were doing all the things that you had been doing prior, and it just kind of stopped working for you as you wore it longer and longer.
Yeah, I mean, I always do the best of my ability. There's never a perfect scenario,
No.
but yes, with trying to do all the right things and rotating sites, bolusing, increasing my basal, talking to my doctors, and it just, I would insert a site, and it wasn't like it was bleeding. It wasn't, any of those types of things. The pump was good, and I'd be 400 before you knew it. And okay, I'm trying to, and it's not coming down. And then I would change a site and give myself a correction, and I would see some progress. It'd start to come down, but then again, it'd start to go up. It's like, what am I? You can't help but think, what am I doing wrong? What is this? What am I not? I'm clearly not doing something right. And I think to circle back to, I wish somebody would have told me 10 years ago, or maybe less. But you don't have to use a pump. You could try something different.
It felt like an imperative, and you were failing because how long they hawked you about getting on a pump.
Correct.
Yeah.
It felt like this was my only option.
Right, and you weren't doing a good job at it, and that's
correct.
Then you have that pressure on top of everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, listen, just I'm not pushing you, but Humalog, Novolog, and Fiasp cartridges are accepted by the InPen.
InPen, okay. Yeah. I'm definitely gonna look into that.
They're not a sponsor anymore, but Medtronic. I'm doing some ads right now for the Medtronic community stuff, but InPen used to be a sponsor. They're not anymore. But yeah, I mean, I've just seen a lot of people use it and get something out of it. So,
no, I'll definitely look into it.
Yeah. When you decide to have kids, do you think about diabetes when you're making that decision, or does it not come to mind? How does that happen?
Diabetes factors into every part of your life. That is for sure. But an approach that I've always taken is that, yes, it's a part of my life and it's a factor, but it's not going to be a deciding factor in anything that I do. If anything, I would say the biggest part of the thought process was, okay, my children have a 5% chance of getting diagnosed. And, that scares the hell out of me, because I just would never want my children, or really anybody, to have to deal with the everyday struggle that you, and I know you as a father, you see that firsthand. And so, but no, that never deterred me to anything. Everything that I do is for my children. When I wake up at 4 a.m. and go work out and, race to get home, and, when I try to take care of myself and keep my A1C under 6, that's not, yes, it's for me, but it's for them, because I want to be the best parent and the best father that I can be for them. When I was growing up, it's actually funny. So we were having a conversation with my son yesterday, and we were just kind of joking around, because he's going into kindergarten this year. And so, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he goes, I want to be a daddy. And it's funny, because when I had the hardest time figuring out what I wanted to do professionally. And I still really don't know what I want to do professionally for the next 30 years. But I always knew that I wanted to be a father.
Oh,
that was always a driving point for me.
Yeah. I have to tell you, I from a young age knew I wanted to have a family.
It's a special, it's a very special thing. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I went into education too, because, I see these kids in many ways as my own, but I just think about parents and the impact that they have on kids and how meaningful it can be. And when I see the flip side and the parents who choose not to do that, it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy being that person for some of these kids who don't.
This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the only CGM you can take off to get into the shower, the Eversense CGM. eversensecgm.com/juicebox. Well, I mean, sure, you could take the other ones off, but then you'd waste a sensor and have to start over again. But not with Eversense. Eversense is a 6-month wear implantable CGM. So if you want to take a shower without anything hanging on you, pop off the transmitter, jump in the shower. When you get back out, put it back on, and you're right back to where you started. Come to think of it, you could do that whenever you wanted to. Maybe it was your prom night or your wedding day. Maybe you just don't want the thing on for a little while, but you don't want to go all through the hassle of taking it off and having to restart it and, starting back over with like wonky numbers and having to, all that goes with it when you take off a CGM and put it back on. Oh, but you don't have to do that with the Eversense CGM. Because Eversense is the only long-term CGM with 6 months of real-time glucose readings. This gives you more confidence, more convenience, and flexibility. The Eversense CGM is there for you when you want discretion, a break, or maybe just a little adult time. eversensecgm.com/juicebox. Pop that transmitter off, pop it back on, you're right back where you started without any wasted devices or time. I used to hate ordering my daughter's diabetes supplies. I never had a good experience and it was frustrating. But it hasn't been that way for a while, actually for about 3 years now, because that's how long we've been using US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. They are the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH, the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide, the #1 rated distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys. They have served over 1 million people with diabetes since 1996, and they always provide 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. US Med carries everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs like the Libre 3 and Dexcom G7. They accept Medicare nationwide and over 800 private insurers. Find out why US Med has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau at usmed.com/juicebox or just call them at 888-721-1514. Get started right now, and you'll be getting your supplies the same way we do.
Who don't get that at home.
Do you think you see it more often than an average person because of your job?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you don't want to answer this, that's fine. But
That's okay.
Just because you've used your name so clearly, and we've belabored it over and over again. But what is it? Is it apathy, drugs, bad upbringings, intelligence? What when you look across the desk and you see who they are, do you know, I know how this is going to go already because of what's your generalization that makes you think it's going to happen? That you're going to be talking to a person who's not that involved or doesn't care so much?
That's a loaded question.
I know. That's why you don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't mind because I believe in it and I'm transparent about it. I think to back up a little bit, I think we have and I know this isn't necessarily a political show and this is a much bigger topic. We could probably go on for hours about this, but we have an enormous problem with our system. And I always say this is that when you go to a hospital, say you think the absolute worst thing happens to you, you have, a tumor in your brain. Mm-hmm. Imagine if your brain surgeon was getting paid the salary that a teacher makes.
You'd be upset.
And you probably think twice. And I just think, how are we valuing education to such a minimal extent? I would say just in my building here, you'd probably predict maybe 50 to 60% of the teachers have second jobs, second incomes, because you can't live off of a teacher wage. And so when you go back to your question, so what is it? So I think it's a couple of factors. Number one, I think for my personal opinion, the institution of family is crumbling. And I think when you turn on the news and you see, a lot of what we stand for as a country, I think it's really easy to see why. Mm-hmm. I think that the kids who are most successful are the ones that when they go home are getting that support. I could be the greatest teacher on earth, and I could sit here in the classroom and I could speak I could speak from the Lord, and what I'm saying is going into your brain, but then the minute they get off that bus and walk into that house, everything can be undone within seconds. If you're trying to, just as simple as this, I want to teach my children about, or I want to teach my students about respecting each other. And they go home and Scott, you tell your kid, you don't need to respect them. We don't like these kinds of people. Well, your word is much more meaningful than anything that I'm going to say as a teacher. And so
how do you think teachers are seen by some people?
I think teachers are very, very undervalued. I remember during COVID, there was like this 1 week where I was at home working out and I had the TV on and I saw like this commercial that said, "Thank you, teachers." I was like, "Oh my God, I've never seen this before."
Right.
And then the next week it was, "We hate teachers and they suck and they're teaching critical race theory and they're trying to indoctrinate our kids."
Oh, I see.
Whoa,
So
that was quick.
okay, so if a news story blows up, then it's everybody.
Yeah,
I got it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same with. I mean, there's always going to be some bad teachers, but there's always going to be some bad cops. There's going to be some bad giant firemen, and there's going to be some bad podcast. Like, there's always bad seeds and everything that you do, but it
you might get a bad average size fireman even.
You might get a bad average size. And
let me ask a difficult question about that. So, because that's a pretty common response, you're not paying teachers enough. What do you expect? So does that mean that because of the salary, it's not attracting the best candidates, or does it?
1,000%. If you had, so and again, it's multi-faceted, multi-layered, but I think about this. I think about it during my experience in administration, how challenging it's been over the past couple of years to try to hire. Mm-hmm. And we have vacancies left and right. We have special ed vacancies. We have classroom teacher vacancies. We had at my school last year, we couldn't hire a music teacher, so we had to cut music programs. And so I think about this when I'm an 18-year-old, graduated high school, and I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to think about what career I want to go into. There's two things that you think about. Hey, what interests you, and am I going to make money? And it's just hard. This is hard to say, but I would not encourage my own children with the current state of things to go into education, because I want them to be successful, and I don't want them to have to deal with the things that I deal with day to day to still not feel comfortable.
Are there other impacts, though? Like, could I be getting a good candidate who is just maybe working a second job or feeling undervalued, and that impacts their performance?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think there's lots of those things. My take is on this. My buddy and I actually just a couple weeks ago, he's an administrator as well. We were having this conversation because he's seeing the same things. In theory, say the minimum starting salary for a teacher was $75,000, which is a very good amount of income. From my opinion, I think you could live very comfortably off of that.
Sure.
You would have people lined up out the door to try to, number one, enroll in teacher education programs, to try to get jobs. When I first walked into education, there was hundreds of people applying for a specific job. We just hired something, a few weeks ago, there was like 3 applicants, and we didn't hire any of them because not one of them would have been effective. And I think there's so many things that would come with that. Is that, number one, you're going to attract more quality people. Number two, you could hold the standards much higher, because if my teachers are making $75,000 and I see Scott, who's teaching first grade, and he's showing up late and he's not following curriculum and he's not assessing the students, XYZ, and I could say, Scott, we value you and we appreciate you, but I have a line of teachers outside the door who would be happy to take your role. And so you need to live up to those expectations.
Yeah, do the job, or I'll replace you. And
and that's not. I mean, and that's that comes off in a very cold.
way. I don't think it sounds cold. You're misunderstanding how I think. I'm good with it. And not just in teaching. And listen, Mark, no lie. Okay, so this happened to me in the last 2 days. I needed tires on my car. And I called a couple places. I found a good price, and I asked them, please order the tires. And they said, oh, absolutely. Come in on Tuesday at 4 p.m. and we will put your tires on. I was like, that's great. So I showed up and parked my car. I went inside. I said, hi, this is my name. I am here for my 4 p.m. appointment to have tires put on that you ordered for me. And they take my car in, they pull the first tire off, they deflate it, take it off the wheel. And, I'm watching it. It's a very nice day. So I'm kind of outside. Like I'm always inside. So I just kind of stood out front in the sun. I had a drink and I was just, enjoying being outside. I wandered back inside to ask a question because they weren't able to get me tires for the back, just the front. And I was like, I'm going to try to order them online. Would you, I went in to find out what that would cost to have them put on. And so I walk in there and now suddenly the manager and the guy who's working on my car are next to each other behind the counter. And they're talking as I approach. I get up there. Neither of them address me. I look at the one guy and he goes, I see him take my key and he heads back to the car. But he doesn't say anything to me. And now I'm standing there because I want to ask my question of the other guy, but he's doing something. And so I take a half a step back. I don't want to pressure him. He's busy. He does not acknowledge me. It goes on for 3 or 4 minutes where we are 4 feet apart and he has not acknowledged me yet. So I say, hey, man. And he looks up. I go, when you have time, I have a question. He goes, oh, you can ask me at any time. And I'm like, okay. So I ask my question. I end up having 2 questions. He answers both of them. I don't feel very confident that he understood one of them, but okay. I walk outside, go back in the sun, and my car is backing out of the garage. And I'm like, so I kind of walk towards the guy and I put my hands up and I'm like, hey. And he puts the window down and he goes, what's up? And I said, there's 2 tires. Like you only did 1. And he looks at me like I have 6 heads. And he goes, did the guy inside not talk to you? And I said, about what? And he goes, your tires aren't here. And I'm like, wait, the tires you ordered me that you told me would be here and I should come here on Tuesday at 4:00, they're not here? And he goes, no, the guy inside didn't tell you? And I went, no. So he talks to me for a couple of seconds and I just leave. I just leave because I'm going to murder somebody if I stay. And I'm just like, I'm fascinated that neither of them looked at me and went, hey, man, I can't believe this, but we don't have your tires. But as I'm driving home, I get past that. And all I can think is, you put tires on a car. The first fucking thing you do isn't to check to make sure you have the tires. It's pull the car in, take the wheel off, jack it up, rip the rubber off the wheel, and then go check to see if you have the new tire. Like, that can't be right. And you do this all day long. And I thought, oh my God, we're all going to die. And then, and then you tell me that we're hiring teachers that aren't qualified. But by the way, the parents don't trust the teachers, but maybe they shouldn't in some situations. And so now we're in a perpetual circle. And then I get home yesterday, and my wife tells me about a news story about one of the major airline manufacturers who's saying that their new generation of engineers don't seem to know their job as well as the old generation. And I'm like, oh my God, my car's going to explode. I'm going to not learn anything, or a plane's going to fall out of the sky. What's the through line? It seems like people don't take their jobs very seriously.
I think part of that is accurate. I think the other part too is just that we live in this state right now where opinion is more important now than fact. And again, not to get
no, go ahead, Mark. I'm fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. But we live in this situation where all of our values and all of our moral, like everything is just upside down. People, so when I was in college for my undergraduate, I was a sociology major. And I did a lot of work about the difference between a collectivist culture, which means people who live for each other, not necessarily socialism, but like people who, like a family, for example, is an example of a collectivist culture, versus an individualistic society where everything is competition and everybody is going up against each other. And when you look at the difference between, for example, a very strong example is the America versus Europe. When you go into European culture, it is a collectivist culture. People bring each other up. It's not necessarily competition. It's how can we do better together as a society or as a country? Whereas here, it has been extreme. It has been an extreme in the past 8 years, it does not matter what the person next to me is doing. It does not matter. It is what only matters is, am I getting what I want? Am I winning?
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
It's not winning through good work. It's just winning.
It's just winning. It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's
ladder climbing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll add my opinion. I feel like it's possible that life is too good at this point for a lot of people. There's too many options of things to do to capture your attention, like cool things. But seriously, Mark, from like, I don't know, 83,000 different streaming services.
Yeah.
And, you've got your computer and your phone and you have an iPad and you could go outside. You could go for a ride in your car. Everybody has a car now. It used to be everyone didn't have a car. You couldn't afford it. You didn't get one. And that was it. But now, you can get a loan without a job. And so so now everybody, and listen, there are some people who are broke. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the Mendoza line for that has gone down and down and down and down. And there are more and more people who I think have access to things that are just frankly a lot more fun than working or being excellent at your craft or that kind of thing. Like, so when you have, it used to be you got up in the morning and you had an egg and you got in your crappy car. I don't know if people remember cars from the 80s, but they weren't a pleasure to drive in. And like now a shit car feels like a comfortable living room. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and so like you drag your ass to work and you do something that if you weren't great at it, somebody was going to fire your ass and you needed to be great at it. So you were, and then you got home and you I don't know what people used to do, stare at a wall, you know what I mean? And then probably
read the newspaper.
Yeah. He probably banged one out and went to bed at 8:30. Right? Like, so like that's it over and over and over again. You couldn't go home and watch a guy play Twitch for 13 hours on your phone. You couldn't go play a video game that looked like you were in the middle of the goddamn Iraq war. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's so much going on now. I don't think anybody's got time to think about their job even.
Well, there's a lack of urgency because of exactly what you said. There's this great amount of privilege and I think a lot of what it boils down to too is we lack a sense of appreciation and a sense of reality. I don't think people understand how good in a large sense. Yes, everywhere you look, there's people struggling.
Well, I think you're seeing the first generation of kids whose parents' lives were pretty easy.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I'm a big fan of Howard Stern. I don't know if you are, but he's one of my most favorite things that he has said recently is, they'll play tapes of, hey, we want a dictator here in America, or we want this or that. And it's like, listen, if that's what go move to Russia or go and I guarantee you won't last 2 seconds and see what it's like. And people don't realize the opportunity that they're in. And I think a lot of what you're boiling down to is, and you said it, we're missing opportunity. And when you look at, if you look at statistics and see where we are as a country, as far as what are we producing that's being exported? Where are we educationally? Where is our economy? It's not in the top 10, not in any of them.
I would say, like political stuff aside, if anyone is looking to be led instead of leading, I think that is to some level like an indication of it's like laziness. It's like, I'll just let a person tell me what's right. And then
apathetic.
Yeah. Then that's another thing I don't have to think about, and I honestly, I'm being serious, like taking any like left or right leaning ideas away from it. If you're in a position in any spot in your life, forget politics, where you're just like, oh, I'll just go with what's being said. That to me feels like you don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
So, but I guess my greater point is that I think it's possible that the guy at the tire shop is not qualified to be a guy at the tire shop. And that's
pretty challenging.
But how is everybody failing up is what I don't understand. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what happened? Like, did the manager at the tire shop stand in front of that guy one day and think to himself, I can't believe I got to hire this guy, but I do? And by the way, the other guys that weren't like, didn't have, I went later in the day, obviously. There were 2 guys there who were watching YouTube videos on their phones, like sitting in the garage. The place wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. There was stuff to be put away. There's stuff to do.
Yeah.
They were watching YouTube videos on their phone. One guy I tried to just like say hello to, and he looked through me like I didn't exist. And I was like, oh my God. Like, what's happening?
Takeaway from that experience is that's a lack of leadership. I think in that instance, yeah, you have an employee who didn't change the tires and was back, but he, as far as from my understanding, if I'm interpreting this right, he looked at you like, my manager didn't take the time to explain to you why I couldn't change the tires because he made this. And then if you have employees that are sitting there watching YouTube and not, that comes down to the leadership, and that comes down to a from top to bottom approach.
Right. There's no pressure.
What am I teaching my employees, and what is my expectations? What is my structure?
Yeah. There's no onus on let's all just do a good job while we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I worked in a sheet metal shop for years and years and years. And I got in there and I hit that time clock and I went for 8 hours. You did not stop. You were happy if you had to take a shit in the middle of the day because it was 5 minutes where you could just like sit there and go, oh my God, I can't believe how hard I'm working. And I made $4.75 an hour. And I'm still not sure I'm not going to get lung cancer one day from what I lived through. And I never went in there and thought they're not paying me enough. And by the way, they weren't. But I never thought this job sucks, which by the way, it did. I never thought I deserve more. Like I just went and I took the job and I did the job. Like I said I was going to do it and I did it. Like that was it. I don't understand the rest of it. Like, and I don't know if I sound like an old person at this point. Like I really don't, but you're going to see a collapse of everything if everyone isn't working hard at the thing that they're being asked to do. And I think your point earlier, no one sees their job as their goal. They see it as something they're stepping on to get to their goal. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know. Like I've seen it in a lot of different areas. Like forget guys in tire shops. I know professional people who work with people who all make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and they put about the same goddamn effort into their job as the guy at the tire shop does. So everybody's just like, I want to, I'm trying to get to the weekend. I'm trying to buy a house. I'm trying to like go on vacation. I want this. I want that. Like, and by the way, I want to back up from it for a second, Mark. You should enjoy your life. Yeah. And you should be a focus. And you should be working towards all the things that you want and feel like you need or whatever. Not if the planes are going to fall out of the sky. Like, you know what I mean?
There has to be some of that intrinsic motivation to listen. I am a tire shop, mechanic, but I'm going to be the best.
I'm going to do a really good job at this because that's
mechanic that I could possibly be.
That's how I'm going to get out of this one day if I don't want to be here.
There's a lack of pride, I think, and people don't. It's just, I think you hit it. It's just people are very apathetic to an extent, and
it's not everybody, and I'm certainly not saying it is, but I'm saying that when it happens, it's so obviously this thing right here.
Yeah,
and I don't know. It's just fantastic. It's crazy to me. Somebody said to me the other day, "Do you make a living talking to people?" And I said, I do. I was like, I don't know another way to put it. Like I do. I sit down, I have a conversation with somebody, I draw out their thoughts, I add my thoughts. It is popular enough that people want to buy ads on it. That's how I make a living. And they were really perplexed by this. I know them personally. I said, that's so interesting. Like, so they're like, so you just talk, and then they kept getting stuck on it. And then the conversation went towards, do you ever think you'll have a real job again? And I said, this is a real job. I said, I know what you mean though. Like, you mean, am I going to have to pick something up or hit something or carry something?
A 9 to 5.
Yeah. And I said, I don't know, maybe, I'm sure this could all fall apart. And then I'd have to go back to work doing something else. Just to watch their heads spin about it. And I think in their minds, I'm part of what I just described.
Yeah.
And
I could see that.
Yeah. And that was really interesting. And I start talking about how it helps people and their health. And I even said, like, I have an image in my mind of a triangle with like 3 points, obviously, because it's a triangle. Can you imagine if I had a triangle with 4 points? Because what I would have is a square.
Quadrilateral.
Yeah. Oh, could I smush it around a little bit? I didn't really pay attention to geometry. From what you're telling me, it's not my fault. I didn't have a good teacher. But I said, like, I have something that I feel like I'm good at, and it pays my bills, and it helps people. And I feel very lucky to do something that touches those 3 points every day. And as I tried to explain how it helped people, what I could see in their face was they don't have a medical issue. They don't have this thing that nobody's given him all of the details for. And he didn't understand why the value was there for people listening. And I thought to myself, I didn't say it to him, but I thought to myself, I hope you never know why this podcast helps people, because that's going to mean that you're having a pretty significant health issue.
Yeah.
But he couldn't like make sense of it.
Yeah. And I think it's hard when you are struggling to communicate a message, but people aren't open to understanding it, or even wanting to understand, oh, this is different and it's okay that it's different. Let me take meaning from it in my own way. It doesn't matter that it's helping hundreds of thousands of other people, but if it's not helping me, then it's worthless.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to back up for a second and go. So
go ahead.
And so just to go back on teachers, and I just want to make sure my point is clear, that I think that teachers are some of the most wonderful people in the face of the amount of work that's done for the turnaround, the income that's given is incredible. And I think if we didn't have teachers, you would have some serious issues. I mean, not beyond the fact that we have education, but the teachers do what they do, not for the money, because of the passion for the work. And what I was just to circle back, and my point is this, is that imagine how much better it would be if our teachers felt valued.
Yeah.
And we're actually being paid something that matches the work that they put. Like it goes, why isn't education valued? And just how incredible our teachers would be and the schools would be if they were funded appropriately. And yes, what that does turn into is that you have people going to education because it might be a backdrop, or it's not their first choice. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so the quality of what we're seeing and the people coming in is maybe not what we had hoped for, but it's not necessarily, I don't think it's on the fault of the teachers. I think it's on the fault of the system. And
I would say that just assessing your input, I would say that it doesn't really matter if it's money or what the reason is that it gets sideways. Like, is it that we're not attracting the best people? Is it that they don't feel valued, so they don't give a full effort? Is it because they're working it doesn't really matter. What matters is that's the prevalent vibe, which is teachers are very important, but we don't value them enough to do all these other things for them. And so that just has to be what's in your head. And I'm sure you come out of school. Listen, my guess is there's two different people that want to be teachers. There's people who want to help people, and there's people who don't want to work in the summertime. I'm going to guess that coming out of college, like that's like where you get, like, that's probably the buckets that people come out of, like, mainly. I'm sure there's others, but I'm obviously generalizing. And so the people who just want the summer off are probably not putting in a full effort to begin with. You probably were never going to get it out of them. And God bless, like, whatever, they still went and got their degree and everything. And then the people who were there to be like, I'm going to change the world 6 months into it, when they realize there's no way I can change the world from here. That probably weighs on them. That's probably burnout. You probably get burnout.
Yes.
That.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. You come because you want to save the world, and then you realize you can't even save the 20 something that are in front of you.
Mm. And 15 of them don't want to be saved, by the way.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
And it makes you reflect on what how can you serve that same purpose?
Yeah.
And are you going to be able to fulfill that, doing what you're doing?
It's interesting because you're describing, if you've heard any of like kind of the grand rounds and cold wind stuff I've been doing this year, where we basically, there's been a number of doctors who have said, look, at some point, you can only say something to somebody so many times before you start thinking they're not going to listen to me. And you can see how it like drags them down. And now I'm hearing that in this conversation about teaching. And so I think it's not about the specific job you're trying to do. I think it's just, again, it's just a human thing. You know what I mean? Like you can't ask somebody to beat their head against the wall forever and expect that they're going to willfully smash it into the wall forever. And, and so is that not, again, the problem of the person on the other side, whether it's the patient or the student or the family or, whatever? Like, if you're not receptive to what's being given to you, you're just taking the ass out of the person who's trying to help you. And then at some point they're going to give up. And then you can't go, well, it's their fault they didn't help me. It's a tough circle that I think we get caught in all the time. Yeah, and I think if we sat back and thoughtfully went through a lot of other parts of society and life, I certainly think we would see that happening over and over again.
It's as simple as just identifying the fact that I'm not perfect, and if I'm the smart, I always say this: if I'm the smartest person in the room, that's a problem. I want to surround myself with people who are smarter than me and who I can learn from. And if I'm closed off and refusing to take input and learn from the people that are around me, whether it's through education or through medical situations or whatever, then what's the point? Like, I'm not, are you that egotistical? Are you that self-centered that you think that you have nothing to gain from others? And I think that's something that's helped driven me, is just identifying that I want to be a sponge and just soak in as much as I can from the people around me, right. Whether it's type 1 diabetes or teaching or fitness or mental health, whatever.
I don't know if this is going to feel one-to-one at first, but when I had my first real girlfriend, somebody who I dated for a stretch of time, she came from a family that was messed up, and my parents were divorced. And so I remember having this conversation at one point when I said to her, I don't know really how to be a good partner in this, because I have no experience seeing it firsthand. I said, but I think if we started with, I'll put you first and you put me first, and then we'll see. I think if I have your best interest at heart, you have mine, we should probably do better. Do you know what I mean? And and that's it's where we started, because we were young and we didn't know what we were doing, and neither of us had a good example. And so I think that about this, about life and working and society. If you just realize that you're a small piece of a big thing that won't work as well without you, I'll put it first. And I don't mean, that the first 90% of my effort goes out to society and I don't care about myself. Just when you're making decisions, start there. Just start with the greater good, and then, get to you, I don't know, 10% later.
Part of contributing to the bigger picture sometimes is just as simple as doing your part.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about any sports team, and how many times do you see the pregame speech and the captain or the coach is just do your part, do your role, do your part, and the team will come together.
Yeah, I've never seen the right guard of a football team interviewed once in my entire life. But, they got through a whole game and nobody got sacked on that side, or they ran through that hole, no problem all day. I've never seen anybody put the right guard on television and go, yo, man, you were blowing holes open left and right
Super
today.
Bowl MVP.
Yeah. You want to go to Disney World, baby? It's you. Yeah, no, they're going to give it to the guy that ran through the hole you made. and that has to be okay to some degree. You know what I mean? If you're going to be a good right guard, you have to know no one's going to know my name or give a crap about what I do. I'm just going to do this thing quietly. And if I do it well, I get to keep doing it.
Everybody wants to be the quarterback.
Yeah.
But not everybody can be the quarterback, unfortunately.
Right. Well, no, almost nobody can. Actually, some of the quarterbacks can't. That's how hard it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what we've decided here today, Mark, but I think we've done it well. And I'm going to ask if there's anything we haven't talked about. And I did not answer you, and I didn't mean to not answer you. I have been listening to Howard Stern since I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
He came to New York. He was in New York in the 80s, right? And then he expanded into Philadelphia. And I saved up to buy a Walkman that had an FM receiver in it. And I would walk out my front door in the morning, put on my little metal strap with the 2 foam things on my ears. And I'd listen to Howard Stern on the bus, walking into school as long as I could every day. We would set up double-sided cassette tapes to record as much of the show as we could so we could listen to it in the afternoon. I was at the DeBella funeral in Philadelphia when John DeBella fell out of number 1. I was at his first book signing in Manhattan. I've met Artie Lang.
Yeah.
I once flew in a private plane from Philadelphia to upstate New York with Stuttering John.
He's in Buffalo, right?
So do you want to know how that happened before we go?
I do want to know that.
My buddy worked at a little private airfield in Northeast Philadelphia. And we were all hanging out one night after midnight at a movie theater where all my friends worked and where I met my wife. And guy comes up screaming up in his car and he's like, yo, you guys want to meet Stuttering John from the Howard Stern show? He's going to fly out of the airport tonight and we could meet him. And I was like, I'll do that. So it's like 1:00 in the morning. We drive to the airfield. We're waiting in the office. This car pulls up and John Melendez, who most people aren't going to know, was eventually I think he was the announcer on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno for a little while. And he comes up. He had been playing in a band in Philly somewhere. Howard Stern was in the middle of a radio stunt where he was running for governor of New York.
Yeah. And he could have won probably.
He was polling really well, right?
Yeah.
And so he was going to announce I know there was a big announcement, I think in Buffalo, right? Is that right? Buffalo?
I think so.
Maybe. Okay. So anyway, John and his friend show up. We chat him up for a little bit. It's 2:00 in the morning at this point. And we actually wander out on the tarmac with him and we're still talking to him. And he goes up. It's a twin prop plane. Like I want to tell you, it was like the pilot, the co-pilot, and 4 seats. Okay. And so we climb up he climbs up on the plane. He turns back to his buddy and realizes that his buddy is not getting on the plane with him. He goes, yo, man, what are you doing? He goes, I can't go with you. I have to go back to the gig and clean up. And John goes, I don't want to fly on this plane by myself. And he looks me in the face and he goes, you want to come with me? And I went, yep. And so I walked away from my friends. I was like 5 or 6 of my friends were with me. My best friend in the world, Mike, and some other guys I'm very close with. I didn't even think for a second about them. I was like, you guys can pound sand. I'm doing this, right? So like I start walking forward and I look at my friend Mike and Brian and they look like puppies. And I said, can I bring some guys with me? And he looks at the pilot. He goes, how many people can we put on this plane? He goes, you can bring that guy and 1 more. And I had to turn around and pick somebody. I picked my friend Mike. And we get up on the plane and we're just chatting. And he's like, I really appreciate it, guys. Like, I'm nervous to fly by myself, blah, blah, blah. He goes, you can hang out when we get there if you want, or I'll have the pilot bring you back. Like, I didn't even have that much thought when I got on the plane. Like, how am I going to get home? Like,
how am I getting home?
Yeah, didn't even think about it. And so, I'm about 19 years old at that point. And I led a fairly sheltered life. I grew up pretty broke. So that's important because as we're taxiing down the runway at 2:30 in the morning with Stuttering John and some guy flying a plane I don't know, in a plane that feels like a goddamn car with a propeller on it, and it's getting ready to lift off the ground, my buddy looks at me and he goes, you've never been in a plane before. And I went, oh my God, I haven't. And John goes, what? I said, I've never flown before. And then the plane just picks up off the ground and goes away. And then we talked about the show and music and stuff for, I don't know, maybe 2 hours for the flight. And we landed at 4:00. The pilot's like, I got to go to the bathroom before we go back. And that's when me and my friend were like, what do we do? And John goes, listen, you can sleep on my hotel room floor if you want, but I don't know how you're going to get home. And we were like, and the pilot's like, I got to fly back. You can come. And so we climbed back on the plane and flew home. And then we, of course, arrived at 6 a.m. There was no car there. So then my buddy and I walked for like 2 hours to get home. After that, I got home at like 8:30 in the morning. And then I kept in contact with John. And I think I saw him a couple more times. I actually did spend the night in his hotel room once when he was playing a gig somewhere. And anyway, that's my Stuttering John story.
I'm pretty floored that Stuttering John has a private jet, or was able to get access to a private plane.
Nah, I'm assuming the show, like they wanted him there, so I'm so assuming the show paid for it to get him there.
My quick 2 cents about Howard Stern. I mean, obviously, all the antics and everything is hilarious, and it makes for great listening. But I think in our generation, he is one of, if not the best interviewer. And I don't know how many people that he has in the show. I think, one example for me is, and for whatever reason, just because I'm an idiot, like Lady Gaga. I never liked Lady Gaga. I don't know why. She's phenomenal. He has her on the show in, I don't know what the first time was, 2018 maybe. And I fell in love with her because of just the way that he conducts the interviews and pulls out the information about these people and gets down to their core and makes them vulnerable. And, beyond her, how many other people I've listened to him interview. And it's like, holy, I didn't know that about this person. Or, he had during the election or after the election, he had Hillary Clinton on, and just to hear about her story, and whether you support her or don't support her, like her or don't like her, but you have to appreciate her as a person.
Interesting story. So Mark, can I tell you something? There's a couple of ideas in there that I employ on the podcast.
Yeah.
I so mimic what you're saying that I can tell you that I know that Lady Gaga sang a song called I Am My Hair during that interview. And I remember as she started singing, I thought, what the hell are we doing right now? I still like that song. I don't know if the song's any good. What I know is that he introduced me to ideas from her head that I would not have gotten anywhere else. And I will tell you that you and I started talking before we were recording, and you said something about like, I appreciate you having me on. Like a lot of these podcasts won't have you on unless you have like some big social media following. And I said, I prefer people who have no, like even once about that, because I like to talk to regular people because I think they're more forthcoming. I think they're honest and they're not guarded and all of these other things. And everyone's story, the part I didn't say to you back then is I think everyone's story is incredibly interesting. And the reason I know that is because in the 1980s, I heard Howard Stern interview a porn star and never once ask her about porn.
Yep.
And just talk to her about her life. And that's kind of how I do this. Like I lead with the idea that you all have something really incredible, but you don't even know what it is. Like you need me to lead you through it so that you can let out the parts that are interesting. Because if you ask people about themselves, they say the same banal shit over and over again that nobody cares about because that's how they see themselves. But they don't see the part that I see. And so I think that's how I do it. And if I'm going to be honest, I learned that from Howard Stern, like that everybody has a story and it's interesting.
I mean, I think that's wonderful. And I think, and I think your guests will appreciate that too, because, again, from my experience today and, what I listen to, it's important. People want to feel valued. And that's also what makes great content is when people feel comfortable enough to open up and share. And you hit the nail on the head is that everybody has a story. Some might be much more fascinating than others, but everybody's story is important. And everybody needs an opportunity or an outlet to tell it. And you never know what might come from it. And you never know also who might resonate with it.
That's the most important part. It's nice for you to tell the story, but it's the people who pick up the tidbits on the other side that's important. And it doesn't matter if I agree with you or I don't agree with you. You would never know while I was talking to you.
No,
you mentioned your experience listening to Hillary Clinton be interviewed. I have an opinion about that. It's not important. Do you know what I mean? My opinion one way or the other is not important. I could hear some in your conversation today, there were some politically marked things you were saying, but I didn't care where you got the idea from. I cared about the concept behind the idea.
And also, Scott, and if I don't know you that well, but if I could make an assumption too, is that you and I, if you and I went to a bar and had a drink, we don't have to agree. And I think that's another piece that we're missing is that it doesn't matter if we agree, but can we have a discourse about it?
Yeah.
Can we have a conversation about it? It doesn't have to be, not everything has to be so volatile.
I would find it more interesting if we didn't agree, honestly.
Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about why you feel that way. Let's talk, but and that's what our country was based on. And I wish more people would be willing to have a conversation.
Even when I end up doing the stuff with Erica that I mentioned earlier, it's mainly about me trying to figure out how people's minds work.
Yeah.
Like that's the part I find fascinating. Even like moderating the Facebook group, like I like that at this point I can tell which way something's going to go. Like it's interesting how people fall into lanes and they don't know it. They think they're being very unique. And I'm like, oh no, this is going to happen. And then that's going to happen. And then this is going to, like, I had a woman yell at me the other day online. And so she was being very unpleasant to people on Facebook. And
let's call her Karen.
Well, you can call her Karen. I might call her something else, but she's being very unpleasant. She had a particular point of view, which I didn't agree or disagree with. It didn't matter to me. Like she could have gotten out her point of view without being horrible to people. Right.
Yeah.
So I removed her comments because they were horrible, not because of the content, not because of their opinion. And so I hope that people can take me at my word. I didn't care what her opinion was or her perspective was. I cared that she wasn't being kind to people. I took it out. Well, in my mind, I was like, I'm going to get a direct message from this woman in 5, 4, 3, 2. Here it comes.
And there it is.
Just because blah, 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 and blah, blah. And I'm not going to like sit by while you push this liberal agenda. And I'm like, all right, here we go. Like, I don't have it. Here's the agenda I have, lady. I want everybody to be nice to each other.
Yep. It's not that hard.
Be nice and have your incredibly conservative opinion about this. And that's fine. Or listen, in getting away from that, go rant and rave at people about how great it is to eat Twinkies or how great it is to not eat any carbs or anywhere in between. Like, I don't care. Just be nice about it.
Yep.
Right. Like, and I have a thread I have to go back and look at after I'm done with you here, where a woman is not being nice about it. And I'm going to have to say, hey, listen, you need to be kinder. And then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Mark, she's going to do exactly what the last person did. She's going to send a nasty message and suggest that I don't agree with her. And that's why I'm doing this. And then I'm going to give her back a very reasonable response that she will ignore every reasonable aspect of it and then call me names and then leave the group. It happens every time it happens.
Honestly, in my opinion, good riddance.
Yeah. And but the point is like, I don't have an opinion about you. Like, just be a cool person and have your opinion. It's great. Like it's fine. But my point is that the next 5 steps they take are always the same.
Yeah.
And it's always in the same order. And then every once in a while, I get a save at the end where they'll go, you know what? I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm so sorry. And like, please, I'd like to forget this happened.
Yeah.
Those people are never a problem again.
Yeah.
But like, if I read to you, like the horrible things that this person said to me the other night, like it went from like, and you can go back to their posts. Oh my God, this podcast is amazing. It saved my life. This helped me. That helped me. My A1C is better. My kid's healthier. Blah, 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 blah. This thing is Mecca for me. Blah, blah, blah. And then 5 seconds after I disagree with you, you're a fucking asshole, Scott. And you're blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, oh, which is it? Did I save your life?
I hope you die.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, very close, Mark. Like, so which is it? Did I save your life or am I a prick? Like, and by the way, if I saved your life, who cares if I disagreed with your point? Which by the way, Mark, I didn't. The irony is I fucking agreed with her.
It's people can't communicate and people can't.
I think the word think is what you're looking for. Thinking's hard, Mark.
Thinking is hard, and thinking for yourself is hard, and having a unique opinion is difficult. And it's much easier, as you said before, it's much easier to let other people lead and go along with the loud crowd than it is to say, you know what, I don't necessarily agree with that one piece, and I'm going to just tell you why. The
point here, in case she's hate listening and still listens, is that she
100% is.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think
she might not be listening to get to my episode, but she's 100% still listening.
Yeah, there's just a few hate listeners. That's fine. I'll take your downloads. The point is that I agreed with her. Like, personally, I agreed with her. But as the moderator, I can't let her be unkind to people while she's making her point. And also, those people have a point, which if you thought about, you could find a way to agree with also, because it's not a black or white situation that we were talking about. And there's a lot of gray in it. But if you ask me personally, I lean towards the person who was calling me all kinds of names, hoping that I exploded, and, said I was pushing a liberal agenda. And by the way, I have a lot of liberal leanings. You're a teacher. I'm sure you do too. I also have a lot of conservative ideas, and I have ideas all over the place. If you talk to me, I'd be a quite complex little person, which I think most people are.
Yeah.
But there she was. She's like, I know what you're doing. I'm like, I don't know what voice in your head you're arguing with, but it's not me. I just happen to be the focus of it at the moment. So anyway, between you and me, Mark, and no one else, I think she's out of her fucking mind. So,
I'll make sure that I'll
don't tell anybody. I think she's crazy.
Close to the chest. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about me telling anybody.
She's either nuts or she was drunk. I don't know which one it is. I don't actually care.
I always wish too. Like I wish I had that much time to. I barely have enough time to give myself a shot of insulin, let alone to sit and just troll you on a Facebook thread. Like, holy shit. If you're that bored, go get another job.
That's the other thing.
Guess what? A lot of people need employees.
Oh, Mark, that's the other thing. It's 11:45 at night, and I'm like, I just want to go to bed. Like, but I can't let this fester overnight because I can tell her crazy doesn't sleep. So I'm like, she's going to be up all night picking at these people, and I can't wake up in the morning to a bloodbath of people who, by the way, just want to know how to pre-bolus their goddamn insulin. They aren't looking to have some existential conversation with her and whatever it is she learned on whatever news organization she listens to or person at work that she listens to or whatever she got her ideas from. Like, I can't let that turn into that. And by the way, this is a very infrequent. I'm being genuine. Like, this happens very infrequently on my Facebook group because mostly people know I'm not up for these stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not okay with this. But it's fascinating how many times people have told me, you don't have to, blah, 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 just because you disagree with me. And I want to respond back and go, no, you idiot. I do agree with you. You're just an asshole. I can't do that. So I just go, I tell my down the middle, like, I'm doing this to protect everybody. Everybody has an opinion, blah, blah, blah. People need to feel safe while they're talking, etc. People come here for community, not to be told that they're wrong. You were very unkind. In the end, you broke rule number one of the group. You weren't kind when you did this.
It takes minimal effort to just say, at the end of the day, I'm going to walk away from this conversation and know that I treated that person the way that they expected or deserved to be treated.
Yeah. I hate to say the way I wanted to be treated.
My opinion is not important enough to make somebody else feel belittled or like shit.
It's fascinating when people feel like they're saving the world 3 posters at a time. I'm like, if you put this much effort into something that could actually help your idea, you might actually get somewhere. But, you're trying to talk Marcy, me, and 3 other people into it. I made up that name. You know what I mean? Like, what then? And have you ever ranted at someone online and had them go, oh my God, thank you. You've changed my mind.
I feel enlightened.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Before I thought this, but now I see that you're right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why everybody's so dumb sometimes.
No, I got to make sure I join that group because it sounds like, there's some great things happening as well as some good entertainment.
My Facebook group is fantastic. It's got 50,000 people in it.
Okay. If I'm not, I might already be a part of it. If I'm not, I'll definitely make sure I join.
Well, listen, I'm glad we ran out of time here. I would tell you about the Etsy seller who couldn't figure out how to send the thing to me now, and now suddenly isn't responding anymore to my notes.
We'll save that for next time.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry. She's going to, it's on its way. It's blah, blah, blah. And then, the UPS, the post office is like, I don't know where this package is. Like, it's somewhere, but it's going, we don't see it. And, I reach out to her and I'm like, all of a sudden she don't know how the messaging function works anymore in Etsy. She forgot how to message me back.
But she can accept your payment.
I do think she's going to take my $100 and do whatever she wants with it. Yeah. Unbelievable. And she has something I really want, which it's not her fault that it's not coming, but like, as soon as it turned into a thing, like, she suddenly became non-responsive about it.
Fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah. Everybody sucks. Except for you and me, Mark. We're terrific. Okay.
We're cool.
All right. I'm still calling this one 5 large firemen or whatever you said.
five giant firemen.
5 giant firemen.
in the moment, they seemed like giants.
I might say 5 giant firemen in my bed, but that seems very long.
It's more descriptive though.
It really is. All right, I'll figure it out, Mark. Thanks. Hold on 1 second for me. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. I want to thank the Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Learn more about its implantable sensor, smart transmitter, and terrific mobile application at eversensecgm.com/juicebox. Get the only implantable sensor for long-term wear. Get Eversense. The conversation you just enjoyed was brought to you by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get started today and get your supplies from US Med. Okay, well, here we are at the end of the episode. You're still with me? Thank you. I really do appreciate that. What else could you do for me? Why don't you tell a friend about the show or leave a 5-star review? Maybe you could make sure you're following or subscribed in your podcast app. Go to YouTube and follow me, or Instagram, TikTok. Oh gosh, here's one. Make sure you're following the podcast in the private Facebook group as well as the public Facebook page. You don't want to miss, please. Do you not know about the private group? You have to join the private group. As of this recording, it has 51,000 members in it. They're active, talking about diabetes. Whatever you need to know, there's a conversation happening in there right now. And I'm there all the time. Tag me. I'll say hi. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you've noticed that the podcast sounds better and you're thinking like, how does that happen? What you're hearing is Rob at Wrong Way Recording doing his magic to these files. So if you want him to do his magic to you, wrongwayrecording.com. You got a podcast? You want somebody to edit it? You want Rob.